What if the only way to stop a nuclear program was to send elite troops inside a mountain that was built to survive bombs? And what if the mountain already knew they were coming? If you want clear breakdowns of the world's most dangerous military stories without the noise, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with one friend who loves strategy as much as you do. Some missions sound risky, some sound reckless. And then there are missions that seem to sit in a category of their own, the kind that force planners to ask a brutal question before anything else. Even if you can do this, should you? That is the shadow hanging over the idea behind what many people now call the Pickaxe Mountain plan. This is not a simple raid story. It is not just another dramatic headline about commandos, helicopters, and explosions. The reason this topic has people so locked in is because it combines almost every nightmare a military planner can face at once. A deeply buried target, a hostile country, nuclear material, uncertain tunnel layouts, limited inspection access, huge political pressure, and almost no easy way to undo a mistake once the mission begins. At the center of it all is a site near Iran's Natanz nuclear complex, a place Reuters has described as Pickaxe Mountain. Public reporting says it sits about 220 kilometers south of Tehran and roughly 2 kilometers from Natanz. According to Reuters, the tunnel facility under construction there began after the 2020 sabotage at Natanz, when Iran said it would build a more modern and more comprehensive haul inside the mountain. That one move changed the whole game. Why? Because once a sensitive facility disappears under rock, the problem is no longer just military. It becomes geometric. It becomes mechanical. It becomes a fight against depth, angles, reinforced entrances, unknown chambers, air shafts, and time. Every extra meter underground can erase an easy answer from the table. That is why this story keeps pulling in Delta Force. Not because there is some confirmed Hollywood-style mission on the calendar, but because public reporting has described ground raid options as part of a broader set of military contingencies. Semaphore reported that one option developed over time by U.S. planners and Israeli counterparts would involve special operations units going in to seize or destroy key nuclear sites. The same report quoted a former special operations specialist explaining that Delta Force has long trained for counterweapons of mass destruction missions, what he called loose nukes operations, where teams go in, secure fissile material, centrifuges, or related items, and remove them. That detail matters. It tells you this is not fantasy built from pure internet drama. There's a real logic behind why people keep pointing to Delta. If a mission involves entering a dangerous site, identifying sensitive material, dealing with contamination risk, and making decisions under extreme uncertainty, then the unit most associated with the most delicate national missions will naturally be part of the conversation. But the moment you hear that, another truth hits you. Training for a mission is not the same thing as wanting the mission, and having an option on paper is not the same thing as having a good option. That is where Pickaxe Mountain becomes terrifying. Reuters reported that the site features tunnel entrances believed to lead to a facility estimated to be at least 100 meters under the mountain. The Institute for Science and International Security, which reviewed satellite imagery, said the site has 2 pairs of entrances and a large security perimeter with hardened portals. Reuters also reported that experts assess the deeply buried complex is beyond the reach of the most powerful bunker buster bombs in the U.S. arsenal. Think about how serious that claim is. The whole modern idea of striking hardened targets from the air starts to wobble when the target is built specifically to beat that method. And that is before we get to the part nobody can fully see, the underground itself. One of the most dangerous parts of any operation like this is not just enemy resistance. It is incomplete knowledge. Reuters reported that the UN nuclear watchdog has been barred from accessing the tunnels. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi said possible uses of the site for storing highly enriched uranium, undeclared nuclear material, or advanced centrifuges cannot be excluded. That sentence should stop you cold. Cannot be excluded. In plain English, that means the world does not fully know what is inside, how much of it is inside, or how soon the site could matter even more. Now imagine being the team asked to enter it. Maybe the tunnels hold assembly equipment. Maybe they hold storage. Maybe they are not fully operational yet. Reuters reported that one assessment from the Institute for Science and International Security said the facility did not appear operational based on satellite imagery alone, but construction continued and the timeline remained unclear. That uncertainty creates a strange kind of danger. If the site is not fully active, striking too early could trigger a wider war over a future threat. If the site is close to becoming active, waiting too long could make the threat harder to stop. That is the trap. Act too soon and you may ignite the region. Act too late and you may lose the last realistic chance to act at all. This is where a lot of people make the mistake of turning the story into pure action. They imagine a direct line from order given to target destroyed. But real missions like this are never linear. They are layers, stacked on layers. Intelligence collection, air defense suppression, isolation of the area, breach planning, contamination response, extraction routes, casualty evacuation, political signaling, escalation control, and every one of those layers can fail independently. Even the name Pickaxe Mountain says something about the problem. The enemy is not only the people defending the site. The mountain itself is part of the defense system. Rock is now armor. Depth is now strategy. Reinforced tunnel mouths are now shields. Geography is no longer background. Geography is the mission. To understand why the so-called Operation Impossible idea gets so much attention, you have to see what happens when air power stops being enough. Most people assume the United States can just bomb any fixed target until it disappears. That assumption works right up until the target is built to survive exactly that. Once bombs become less reliable, the conversation gets uglier fast. If standoff weapons cannot guarantee the result, then somebody may have to walk in. And walking in changes everything. A ground raid on a nuclear-linked site is not just a fight. It is a chain of specialized problems under fire. First, you need to get to the mountain. Then you need to isolate it. Then you need to breach entrances designed to slow or channel attackers. Then you need to move through a tunnel system that may be unfamiliar, blocked, booby-trapped, damaged, or deliberately confusing. Then you need to identify what you are looking at with enough certainty that you do not destroy the wrong thing, miss the right thing, or trigger a contamination disaster. Then you need to leave. That last part may be the hardest of all. Because an operation like this only sounds surgical from a distance, up close it starts to look like a temporary occupation of a very small, very lethal piece of terrain. Semaphore reported that there are contingency plans to temporarily occupy certain locations, and that basic questions still hang over the entire idea. How long would it take? How permissive is the environment? What are the material hazards and logistics? How many places would have to be entered in order to effectively remove or destroy highly enriched uranium or related materials? Those are not side questions. Those are the mission. Now place Delta Force inside that puzzle. People hear Delta and think speed, stealth, and precision. And yes, all of that matters. But a mission like this bends even elite capabilities into something harsher. This is not a classic hostage rescue where seconds decide everything. This is not even a clean kill capture raid. This is a contest between human skill and a defended industrial labyrinth built under stone. The operator is no longer only a shooter. He becomes part fighter, part locator, part demolitions partner, part security element, part problem solver in a tunnel where small mistakes multiply. And if Delta is involved, Delta would not be alone. A mission against a target like this would demand a much wider machine around the assault force. Intelligence assets would need to watch roads, airfields, and military movements. Aircraft would need to suppress threats and maintain overhead awareness. Specialists in explosives and hazardous material handling would need to stand ready. Medical evacuation would have to be close enough to matter and far enough to survive. Planners would need to think about what happens if part of the tunnel collapses with friendly troops still inside. They would need to think about communication blackouts underground. They would need to think about fire, dust, oxygen, power loss, smoke, and panic. If you are still watching, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. So press like, subscribe, and share this with someone who wants the full story, not just the loud version. Here's where the plan stops looking like a raid and starts looking like a test of endurance. The first challenge is isolation. You do not hit a site like this unless you can buy time around it. If defenders can flood the area, the assault force becomes trapped between the mountain in front of it and reinforcements behind it. That means any serious plan would have to create a controlled bubble around the target, at least long enough for the main force to breach, search, act, and pull back. In theory, that sounds simple. In practice, it means surveillance, strike options, route control, and near-perfect timing. The second challenge is entry. Reuters described hardened entrances and backfilled access at some portal areas. That means a breach is not just a matter of opening a door. Attackers may need to clear debris, remove obstacles, neutralize charges, or blast inward without bringing the entire tunnel face down on themselves. Breaching too softly costs time. Breaching too hard may collapse the route you need. Then comes the third challenge, and this is the one most people underestimate. Underground movement is brutally different from open combat. In the open, you can maneuver. You can spread out, you can flank, you can use distance. Inside tunnels, all of that shrinks. Routes narrow, corners conceal, blasts overpressure the passageway. Dust kills visibility, smoke hangs in the air, sound becomes deceptive. A tiny defending force in the right place can delay a much stronger attacker. Now add uncertainty about the map. That is where the mission gets psychological as much as tactical. Every junction becomes a question. Every sealed chamber becomes a risk. Every side room could hold nothing, equipment, defenders, or something far worse. If the goal is to find material or destroy key systems, then the team cannot just clear and leave. They must identify, confirm, document, secure, decide. That takes minutes. Minutes become hours. Hours become exposure. And this is why the word impossible keeps hanging around this story. Not because no human being could physically enter the site. Of course, someone could. The problem is that success may require too many things to go right at the same time. You need intelligence that is good enough to guide the assault, but honest enough to admit what it does not know. You need air and ground coordination that holds under pressure. You need a breach that opens the path without destroying it. You need defenders who can be contained long enough to matter. You need the right specialists at the right chamber at the right moment. You need to decide whether the mission is seizure, sabotage, or destruction. And you need a way out after all of that. Let us slow down on that decision point, because it changes the entire shape of the operation. One path is seizure. Go in, secure the material, remove what you can, and leave with proof that the core pieces are gone. On paper, that sounds like the cleanest strategic result. You do not just damage the program, you physically take away critical elements. But it may also be the most dangerous version of the mission. Moving sensitive material out of hostile territory is not like carrying captured documents. It raises handling challenges, transport problems, contamination concerns, and escort burdens at the exact moment the enemy is most desperate to hit you. The other path is destruction. That means the mission is less about carrying something out and more about making sure something cannot be used. Explosives, demolition logic, controlled collapse, selective destruction if possible, broader destruction if necessary. That path sounds simpler, but it has its own nightmare. How do you know you destroyed enough? How do you verify it in a buried complex? How do you avoid sealing away dangerous material in a way that creates a new unknown instead of eliminating the old one? In other words, seizure is harder to execute. Destruction may be harder to prove. And if you cannot prove the result, the mission may fail politically, even if it succeeds tactically. That leads to an even deeper issue. A raid like this would not exist in a vacuum. The moment it begins, it collides with regional escalation. Iran would not view it as a minor discrete action. It would be seen as a direct strike deep inside sovereign territory against one of the country's most sensitive programs. That means retaliation would not be a side effect. It would be part of the expected environment from the first shot. So now the operation must do two jobs at once. It must achieve the tactical goal underground, while also surviving the strategic shockwave above ground. That shockwave could hit in many forms. Missile launches, drone waves, attacks on bases, attacks on shipping, proxy responses, rapid political pressure from allies and rivals, emergency diplomacy, market panic. Even if every detail is impossible to predict, the basic truth is obvious. The raid would not be the end of the story. It would be the start of a much bigger one. And that bigger story is exactly why public reporting keeps returning to the same brutal question. If the site is too deep for reliable destruction from the air, what option is left that does not carry extreme risk? There may not be a clean answer. That is part of what makes this such a powerful topic for viewers. It is about collision between capability and limits. We are used to hearing that top-tier units can solve anything if given the order. Pickaxe Mountain is the kind of scenario that tests that belief. It asks whether elite skill can overcome bad geometry, incomplete knowledge, a prepared defender, and the ticking clock of regional war. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes even the best unit in the world is being sent not into a good plan, but into the least bad plan remaining. That difference matters, because when people say Delta Force could do it, they often mean Delta Force could attempt it. Those are not the same statement. Attempting is about capability. Succeeding is about conditions. The conditions here are vicious. The mountain is deep. The entrances are hardened. The interior may be only partly understood. The political consequences are massive. The site may not even hold exactly what planners fear, which means uncertainty haunts both action and restraint. And yet, doing nothing carries its own danger if the site eventually protects a more advanced stage of the program. That is what turns the mission from dramatic to tragic. No choice is easy, no path is clean. Every option carries cost, and some costs would only become visible after the decision was made. And there is one more layer that makes this even harder to think about. In public discussion, people often talk as if a mission succeeds the moment the assault force reaches the target chamber. But in reality, that may only be the midpoint. Once the team finds the critical area, the hardest choices may begin. Is the room exactly what intelligence predicted, or only part of it? Is the equipment active, damaged, empty, or already moved? Is the material safe to handle? Is there evidence of additional chambers deeper in the complex? Do you split the force and search wider, or stay disciplined and hit only the highest confidence targets? Every branch in that decision tree burns time, and time is the one thing a mission like this can never truly afford. This also explains why some analysts see the mountain not just as a target, but as a trap for decision makers. The deeper and more complex the site becomes, the more it pressures leaders into choosing between bad forms of uncertainty. If they stay out, they may be leaving a protected nuclear node intact. If they go in, they may be sending troops into a fight where success cannot be fully measured until after the region has already absorbed the shock. That is a brutal command problem. It means the military challenge and the political challenge are fused together. The team on the ground might do everything right and still leave leaders arguing for months over whether the result justified the risk. And that is before information warfare explodes around the mission. The moment something this sensitive happens, every side will race to control the story. One government will claim total success, another will claim almost no damage. Independent verification may take time, especially if the site is buried, sealed, or inaccessible afterward. So even the public meaning of the raid could become part of the battle. Was the program crippled, delayed, or merely bruised? Was material destroyed, relocated, or hidden in a section no one reached? In a crisis like this, uncertainty does not end when the shooting stops. Sometimes it gets even louder. If this breakdown is helping you think more clearly about the story, tap subscribe, hit like, and share it with one person who is tired of shallow takes and wants the real tension behind the headline. Now let us talk about why Pickaxe Mountain feels so different from the special operations stories people already know. Most famous raids depend on speed and surprise. The force arrives before the defender fully understands what is happening. Confusion helps the attacker. Time helps the attacker. Initiative helps the attacker. Even when resistance is fierce, the mission usually assumes there is a narrow window in which the attacking side controls the rhythm. Pickaxe Mountain flips that logic. The defender already understands the importance of the site. The entrances are visible enough that everyone knows roughly where the fight would begin. Public reporting says the perimeter has been strengthened. Access has been hardened. Inspection access has been restricted. The world is not looking at a forgotten warehouse in the desert. It is looking at a place that has been watched, discussed, and protected for years. That means the attacker may begin the mission without the one advantage special operations loves most: uncertainty in the enemy's mind. Instead of forcing the defender to react from shock, the attacker may be stepping into a space the defender has already imagined many times. That does not make success impossible, but it makes every phase more expensive. You may need more force to isolate the zone. You may need more time to breach. You may need more ammunition underground. You may need more backup plans for blocked routes. You may need more medical support because the chance of casualties rises. And because the site is tied to the nuclear issue, you may need stricter decision-making before anyone destroys anything. All of that adds weight. The popular image of elite units is light, fast, and invisible. This mission pushes in the opposite direction. It becomes heavier, louder, slower, more technical, more exposed, less forgiving. That is why the phrase Operation Impossible works so well, even if it is more commentary than official label. It captures the feeling of a mission that breaks the template. You are no longer asking, can an elite force reach the target? You're asking, can an elite force reach the target, make the right technical decisions, survive the underground problem, avoid strategic disaster, and leave behind a result that actually changes the nuclear picture? That last part is huge, because even a perfectly executed raid cannot bomb knowledge out of existence. Destroying centrifuges matters, denying access to material matters, collapsing tunnels matters, but scientists remain. Engineering experience remains. Industrial memory remains. In the best case, a raid buys time and changes the strategic timeline. In the worst case, it triggers a broader conflict while only delaying the underlying problem. That is why any serious analysis has to resist the temptation to present this like a clean final answer. It is not a magic eraser. It is a high-risk attempt to remove or damage a protected node in a much bigger system. And yet, that does not make it meaningless. Time matters in nuclear strategy. Delays matter. Denied access matters. Uncertainty imposed on the other side matters. If a protected site is meant to guarantee survival of the program, then proving it can still be threatened changes the mental map of everyone involved. That may be one reason this topic feels so emotionally charged. It sits right at the line between military action and strategic signaling. A mission like this would be telling multiple audiences different things at once. To the target, it says, nowhere is fully safe. To allies, it says, the threat is being taken seriously. To rivals, it says, hard targets are still contestable. To the public, it says the crisis has reached the point where extreme options are being discussed openly. And to the people ordered to carry it out, it says, you may be stepping into one of the hardest assignments modern special operations can produce. That is why I keep coming back to the mountain itself. The real star of this story is not the operator. It is not the aircraft overhead. It is not even the politics, though politics may decide everything. The star is the brutal logic of a target designed to survive the first, second, and maybe even third answer on the military menu. When a site is buried this deep, the planner begins to run out of elegant choices. And when elegant choices disappear, history gets dangerous. So if you strip away the hype, What is Delta Force's crazy Pickaxe Mountain plant really about? It is about the moment when a state looks at a hardened underground nuclear-linked site and realizes air power may not guarantee the outcome. It is about the moment contingency planning shifts from remote strike to physical seizure or sabotage. It is about the moment special operations stops being a precision shortcut and starts becoming a brutally complex instrument for buying strategic time. It is about a mountain that may force the world's best operators to fight not for a clean victory, but for an acceptable result. And that may be the most honest way to understand it. Not as a guaranteed mission, not as an official operation already unfolding, not as a fantasy where elite troops solve a geopolitical crisis in one night, but as a nightmare scenario that keeps surfacing because every easier option looks less certain the deeper the tunnels go. That is why this story stays with people. It is not really about whether Delta Force is brave enough, skilled enough, or dangerous enough. Everyone assumes they are. The real question is whether any human force, no matter how elite, can enter a defended mountain, solve a nuclear problem in the dark, and come out having made the world safer instead of setting it on fire. And, until someone can answer that with confidence, Pickaxe Mountain will remain what it is now in the public imagination. A target so hard, so deep, and so politically explosive that even talking about the plan feels like staring at the edge of a wider war. That is what makes it unforgettable. That is what makes it terrifying. And that is why the most dangerous part of Operation Impossible may not be the assault itself. It may be the fact that the world could one day decide there is no other option left.